Hi there, I'm John Michael Garapi and this is Popcorn Roulette. Each episode I ask a guest to come on the show, they suggest a movie, and we get together and we talk about the movie. Today I have with me Cos Fricano. Cos, how you doing?
Very good.
Good.
Glad to be here, thank you.
Great to hear it. What do you do?
I'm retired, 9 years now, but I worked in high tech.
Yeah, so do you do, so you don't do nothing nowadays? Are you just
I got
enjoying your time? Or?
Condo, a house, kids, I got more work now than I ever had before.
Yeah.
I worked in high tech, hardware, software, and
Yeah,
kind of stuff,
yeah.
but I don't miss it a bit.
Great, great. Today we're talking about The Searchers with John Wayne and John Ford and Jeffrey Hunter. You brought your John Wayne shirt.
Right. My wife bought me the shirt.
It says Old Guys Rule, which
Right.
I love. That's great. But before we get to the movie, we got to have these Raisinets. Get started.
Come on.
Did
More
they
mi-
come?
okay,
There we go.
that's-
There we
that's
go.
too many.
All right.
Okay, that's great. The other good movie were the Ask for the Raisinets. Blazing Saddles.
Yes.
I dare you to do that movie someday.
Someone is going to end up suggesting it, I'm quite sure. Why did you choose The Searchers?
Well, I love Westerns.
Right.
I love American history. And you put the two together. It's epic, a lot of themes to it, and I like it when one person takes an idea and just goes with it, never stops.
Digs his feet in.
Digs his feet,
And
no
just-
surrender.
On the subject, because this is the first time we had an official Western on, we had Westworld come on, but Westworld's more science fiction than anything else. What is the appeal of Westerns? Why Westerns specifically?
It's part of what built the United States.
Yeah.
It really is a microcosm of how our country came to be.
Right.
There are a lot of bad parts in it, of course.
Of course.
The Indians were treated terribly.
Yes.
But back in those days, that's how things unfortunately went.
It's a little slice of history, but it's there's also like a frontier aspect to it.
Right.
Where people always kind of wonder, like, what if I was in these situations? I think what if I was in this situation is one of the big driving force of a lot of movies.
Right. And like in the movie, she said, this country will be something someday. But
Yeah.
a lot of people have to have their bones in the dirt to do it.
Yeah.
And so it's the whole thing about how the country came about in the spirit.
Yeah.
Going out there all on your own, and sometimes leaving the comforts, new land, dangers. It's what America is all about.
Well, on a similar subject, I'm always curious as to like why John Wayne too. Not necessarily in this movie or anything like that, but just like why does John Wayne end up becoming such an important piece of the Western? I don't want to say the early days of the Western because like he wasn't really around for the early days of the
Right.
Western, but like the formative time period where we generally think of Westerns, we're thinking of like movies from the 40s and 50s.
Right. Well, his association with John Ford, of course.
Yes.
He did other Stagecoach, I think.
Yeah.
Right.
He was in Stagecoach.
But he's big, he's tall.
Right.
He's fearsome, and that's what people want in the people out west. He's not like a Kit Carson, 5'8" or something, right?
No.
Yeah. So
he's also not a beautiful man by any means. Like, if you look at old pictures of John Wayne, he looks like a good-looking guy.
Yeah,
But
yeah.
he didn't grow into a charming, svelte man or anything like that.
No, he wouldn't be your leading man. I can't remember hardly any pictures where he actually would, kiss a woman, much less embrace her. He was, was very conservative.
Yeah.
Conservative guy. But he was the epitome of strong, masculine, out west. We're going to do it.
Right.
That's
right.
why I think they chose him.
We're going to be getting into the thick of it. So why don't you explain the plot of The Searchers to us? A synopsis.
Wow. Okay. They're trying to settle Texas. The wars are going on with the Indians, the Comanches. His homestead gets attacked. His brother's homestead gets attacked, and they murder some of the people, unfortunately. And the little girl gets captured, and he wants to bring her back, because to him, living with the Indians was just the worst thing. No living at all. Right.
Yeah.
So and the whole picture is all about him trying to get her back, and of course the big overtone of racism.
Yes.
In the whole movie.
Yes.
But again, it was shot in 1868.
Yeah.
Things were different back then,
Yeah.
unfortunately. And that's really just the name of the movie gives it away. The Searchers.
Right.
All right. Just plowing along, trying to find her, and how he redeems himself near the end. I won't
Right.
give it away now. But it's a movie of redemption.
Right.
He finds at an older age, he's probably 40 something in the
Yeah.
movie, that he can change.
Right.
And it's important that people can change.
Well, let's back up a little
Right.
bit. Like Ethan is like, what kind of man is Ethan?
Ethan was a soldier, fought for the Confederacy, never surrendered, as they say
Right.
in the movie. And like I said, he takes one oath at a time. So we stand up, and he's good on his word. He gives his word, he's going to do it. But at the same time, he doesn't give any quarter figure.
At the beginning of the song, the Sons of the Pioneers make my job a little bit easier because they asked a couple of questions.
What makes a man to wonder? What makes a man to roam? What makes a man leave bed and board and turn his back on home?
What makes Ethan wander? Like, what is causing him to not settle down and put his roots down?
Well, I think he was coming back to be with his brother. And
Yeah.
of course, there's the undertone of he really was in love with his brother's wife.
Right, right.
And I never picked that up the first time I seen
Oh,
the
you
movie.
didn't? Yeah.
No, I
It
was
is
too young.
very subtle, admittedly.
Very subtle, and I think that was the closest thing he had to a home.
Yeah.
But in reality, he never does get home.
I mean, some of those subtleties are lost on a modern audience. The one quick scene that they have with Ethan and Martha, they're playing like a love song from like the Confederacy, which is just not something a modern audience would recognize.
didn't
But the love song specifically about like unrequited love or something like that. And it's just like one of those little clues that's lost on us.
And the way she folds and strokes his cape, she's folding his clothes.
It's very loving,
Yeah.
but it's also very silent and behind people's backs.
Right.
So here's the question, because this movie is very much about racism. How exactly is Ethan a racist? Because we have to breach this. We can't get any further without actually getting into it.
Right.
Like he does a number of racist things in this movie.
Back then, that's how a lot of people thought. We walked into the Indians' backyard.
Right.
They didn't invite us. Like in a movie, the chief gets a couple of his sons are killed. But that's how it was back then. When you seen your family get slaughtered and all the other stuff that happened, that's why he was a racist. I don't think he was a racist by today's standards at
Yeah,
all.
yeah.
This is the way it was back then.
Right.
Okay, a lot of times they'll do a movie and they'll try to compare it to today's standards.
Right.
John Ford didn't do that.
But I think there's also something, because he goes beyond just being racist. I mean, like he's talking to Martin. He doesn't like Martin because Martin's 1/8.
Yeah,
one-eighth Cherokee, I believe.
Cherokee,
At the
yeah.
beginning, towards the
Right,
beginning of this
right.
movie, he refuses to actually say that like this kid's his nephew because this kid thinks of him as his uncle.
Right.
He goes beyond like racism, I don't like you sort of thing. Like there are times when he is desecrating corpses, and it really raises a question. Like one of the questions being that like he left the Confederacy. It's been 3 years since he's been home. Where has he been this entire time? How did he learn Comanche language?
That's a good question, because I did hear that somehow maybe in the original book he may have fought in the Mexican Wars.
Yeah, I
I've
actually
heard
know
about
that one too.
You got that too, huh? Yeah.
I didn't want to like bring it up, but since we brought it up, yeah.
I guess the coins he had might have been from that.
The double eagle coins.
yeah.
Oh, speaking of the double eagle, so I got something for this.
Yeah.
So he's got 180 double eagles on it, right?
180, yeah.
180, and that's the ones he's showing. So 180 double eagles is worth $3,600. Adjusted for inflation, that'd be $60,000 cash he's wandering around the West with in his pocket. Double eagles are actually kind of rare coins, but if they were freshly minted, they'd be worth $36 million. So if he had buried that money and then it had popped up and they found this load to be like $36 million worth of collector's coins, where is he getting this money from?
Well, I'm sure he earned some of that in the Mexican War.
Yeah.
And obviously, the way he wandered and stuff, he probably didn't have to pay much.
Yeah.
For food and stuff.
Do you think he was committing any crimes? I mean, the captain seems to think that he fits a lot of descriptions.
Well, yeah, he had that. I didn't realize he had that much. His
well-
brother took care of it real quick.
Stashed
The
that
chair.
away.
Right. He said, okay, he wasn't going to deny it. He wasn't going to say no. But that's big money.
we watch westerns of this time period, and we end up with these scenes where it's like two men against a band of Indians.
Mm-hmm.
And I'm just wondering how realistic you feel like many of these fight scenes are, or like how the fight scenes end up playing out in your mind.
Some of the parts I didn't think were too realistic. So when they fought at the river, the first, he had the war bonnets on. They didn't wear war bonnets.
No.
Not too much, especially the Comanches. You know.
I mean, if we wanted to be technical about it, these are Navajo, and they're
the
doing
Navajo
a
Indians,
Navajo women's dance as opposed to the
Really?
war
Yeah.
dance that they say that they're doing. I think it's a women's dance. I don't want to. Don't quote me on that.
There was a white actor who played the chief.
Yeah.
But that was just the way it was in Hollywood back then.
Right,
But
right.
he did let a lot of the Navajos into the film.
They weren't expecting us to scrutinize these things 50
No,
years from now, go
no.
back and be like, oh, that wasn't the exact clothing that sort of Indian warrior would use. What would your average American audience member know? You know?
Right. Yeah. There's again, most people don't read the history like we do.
Yeah, yeah.
And they're not going to pick this. There's other nuances in the film that aren't
Right.
quite right.
Well, we're on the subject. I mean, much of this film is filmed in Monument Valley. John Ford absolutely loves Monument Valley.
Yeah.
So why does John Ford keep coming back to Monument Valley? What's the appeal of this specific location in like Utah, roughly?
Beautiful.
Oh, it is beautiful.
And this is one
But
of
I
the,
mean, I think people could argue that Texas is also beautiful, and they could have filmed there.
well, it was interesting that he's got this ranch out in the middle of the desert.
Yeah.
I never figured that part out. I mean, he's trying to raise cattle, and I don't see any grass. But I think he used the valley because that film was done in wide CinemaScope-like type technique.
Yes.
The very first few times.
VistaVision?
VistaVision.
Yes.
And that lent itself to wide landscapes.
Right.
Monument Valley definitely was that way.
Right.
It's a beautiful place.
No, it's you get these beautiful wide shots out of it. It also seems to affect the studio shots too, VistaVision, which also makes because a lot of people have a tendency to comment like, oh, the fireplace settings, the in-studio stuff looks kind of fake. And that's VistaVision at work. It's great for large areas. It doesn't seem to do very well for small areas.
Yeah, there's some criticism of some of the soundstage scenes, like when they're walking in the swamp there and things like that. But
Yeah.
for the average person, like, you're never going to see it.
Yeah.
Not denigrating any people watching the movie.
No.
But, because you're just, enthralled by it all. It's just great.
So Ethan at one point in time and Martin, they're going to try to search after Debbie. They bring Brad with them, the Jorgensen's boy, because Lori was originally lost. Turns out she was killed. Brad is told later that Lori is dead, and he goes down in a blaze of glory, gunslinging, attacking the Comanche camp, which of course results in his death. You can't survive something like that.
Right.
Ethan comes back, blames himself because he killed Mr. Jorgensen's son, as far as he's concerned. Mr. Jorgensen says, no, it wasn't you. This country killed my boy. It's the country that killed my boy.
That's true.
Which of them are right?
I think the father was right.
Yeah.
Because it was a hard life. And again, back then, you had 10, 12 kids.
Yeah.
Because a lot of them didn't get past 5, 6 years old. A lot of malaria and stuff, called the ague, whatever fever. A lot of people died young. It was a tough life, and it was not to say they weren't sensitive to a child, being lost.
Yeah.
But that's how things were sometimes. They were tough.
Yeah.
So
I mean,
they went on. They just kept going.
They were tough. I've got a quote from Roger Ebert, excuse me. And first of all, I should point out, Roger Ebert loves this movie.
Yeah.
Gave it 4 stars. It's high on his list. But he does have like one point which almost feels like criticism, where he says, I think Ford was trying imperfectly, even nervously, to depict racism that justified genocide. What do you think John Ford was thinking about when he was making this movie? Like, what do you think his intent was?
Well, that's a good question. I think he was just trying to show, again, how it was back then and how people can get over the racism.
Yeah.
He did get over it. Even among the Indian tribes, they would fight and they would take slaves and all the rest of it. There was a lot of wars just between the different tribes. They didn't all get together.
Right.
They'd get together once in a while to, take out like Custer. But I think it was just trying to show how the West was back then.
Yeah.
And make a good movie and pay the freight. Go ahead.
I'm just throwing question after
Okay,
question.
I get it.
We get stuck with a position where I've got like a bunch of questions. Here's one of the great things about The Searchers. The Searchers brings forward a lot of questions. It's like a movie that makes you like sit there and struggle with it. If you're going to enjoy this movie, you have to struggle with this movie, I think. I think that's why like good movies force me to give me a ton of questions to actually put in, where I don't even have to like go researching to try to find questions. I just have these questions, then I do the research, you know?
Yeah, there's a lot of scenes in there that didn't quite jive, but
Yeah.
it's not the type of questions I think, you're going for.
Yeah.
It's like, why did this happen? Why did these people act this way?
Right.
And it's just the way it was back then.
Yeah,
There's sometimes there's too much thinking into why these people did these things. They were surviving.
Yeah.
Both sides are trying to survive. They were in a struggle. And the Comanches were known to be probably one of the more ruthless tribes
Right.
of them all.
Yeah.
They were a tough nut, but these two different people trying to survive, class of civilizations.
Right.
It's just, we're trying to, open up the United States and move out west and, the minerals and all the rest of it.
Yeah.
And here these Indians who lived fairly peaceful were getting pretty much pushed out.
So I got a philosophical
Yeah.
question in the middle of
Okay.
all this. So Martin comes back. Laurie starts falling for him, says that she's always been in love with him.
Mm-hmm.
And it looks like for a moment here, Martin's going to get a chance at like marital bliss. But then he finds out Ethan has found or has heard word where Debbie is, and Ethan's back on the hunt. And Martin feels he must go after Ethan because Ethan is very well likely to kill Debbie.
Yeah,
That's
at that
the whole
point in
entire
time, he's going to take her.
Yeah, it sounds like he's going to take her out. But the question is, Martin is driven to continue this quest. Obviously, Laurie wants him to stay there. What would the correct thing be to do? I guess what I'm asking is it better to be smart or is it better to be right? Like the smart thing to do is to stay put and live out your life, but the right thing to do is to go after Ethan.
Well, that's his sister.
Yeah,
For all, he was not blood, but that's his sister. He grew up with her.
right.
And he's not going to let his sister get killed by some madman racist in his mind. He's the protector, the good angel on John Wayne's shoulder.
Well, this also brings up the question of being like, well, who's the protagonist of this movie? Because obviously this movie really loves to focus on Ethan.
Right.
John Wayne has got this big personality, but is he actually the hero of this movie?
I'd say yes. I mean, he's the central figure. But if you can think deeper, and Martin could be the hero too. It
Yeah.
depends on how you want to look at it. As it turns out, John Wayne is the hero.
Yeah.
No doubt about it. In my mind.
So later on, they eventually get Debbie, and he lifts Debbie up into the air like she's a blanket to be observed and figure out like if it's a good blanket or a bad blanket, and then he wraps her in his arms. He says, "Let's go home, Debbie." What changes his mind? At one point in time in this movie, did Ethan have a change of heart?
Probably right then.
You think it like spontaneous?
I just think
boom.
when he looked at her, because in the beginning of the movie, he lifts her up,
Yes.
right? When he says, Debbie in the beginning, and at the end, he lifts her up. And probably in his mind, he's flashing back to when he lifted her up in the beginning when she was just a little girl.
Yeah.
And he knew right then and
That
there
one
that
act
was-
is just something like all of a sudden I
Right.
couldn't possibly kill this girl. She is my niece.
Yeah.
She could be his daughter. We're never
Yeah, I heard
100% certain about
8
that.
years in there. So 8 years between he left and when the baby was born. I heard about that.
Yeah.
I'll be truthful. When I see that scene,
Yeah.
even now, I well up.
Yeah.
Even thinking about it, I still well up when I see her, because it's like family, and that's what the movie's about too. Of
Right.
course, family.
Yeah.
Right. And he's just like, "I'm taking you home."
Right.
Of course, he doesn't go home. That's the symbolism of the doors.
Yeah. I mean, like at the same exact time, Debbie also, she seems to make a quick transition also because at first she's trying to tell them to get out of here. She wants them to leave. She wants to live her life out with the Comanche. But it seems like that she resigns in a very small amount of time too.
Right. That's an interesting point. Maybe she also wanted to save their lives by telling them to leave because they were outnumbered and trying to save their lives. She'd sacrifice herself.
So here's the question. We get to the end of this movie. Like, does this movie, is this a happy ending? Because it's framed like it's a happy ending. But like, I don't know if we're technically in happy ending territory. We have a destroyed civilization. We have a girl who's back in a household that she's afraid of, I'm quite sure. And we have Ethan walking off into the wilderness. Does this equal success? Is this like a good ending?
I think it's a muted success. Obviously not so much for him.
Right.
Though he probably, did he really get rid of his racism completely?
Right. No.
But for that particular piece he did. And again, you know, it's very well done. Martin is walking away with, what's the woman's name again?
Laurie.
Laurie. She's got him and the families, and they're all sort of with each other, you know.
Right.
But he's outside.
Yeah.
And he still does not have a home.
Any idea where Ethan might be going to? Just in your own imagination?
Yeah, boy, you know, that's a great one. No, I have never thought of that. But I know in that pose, I heard he's holding his arm like that, and that was a tribute to one of the old time.
Carrie.
Yeah,
Harry Carey.
Harry Carey, whose son was in the movie too, the one who got killed, Brad. So yeah, Ethan probably, who knows? You know, I think it's left for people to think about.
I almost forgot. We got into this conversation, but I have the negative review. Unfortunately, we do this for every episode because I'm rarely going to say something
Who
bad.
did that?
Well, first of all, it can be difficult to find a negative. It isn't hard to find a negative review of The Searcher specifically, but on Rotten Tomatoes, this movie has 100%. So
100.
many reviewers like this movie. There are people who have dissenting opinions, of course. They just aren't official review. They aren't some of the cream of the crop reviewers that pop up on Rotten Tomatoes. This is called The Searcher, is my most overrated film. It comes from The Guardian by Zan Brooks.
The Guardian?
The Guardian.
English paper.
Yeah.
Okay.
For perhaps the first time, Ford entertained the possibility that settlers and the Native Americans might be as bad as each other. Or to put it another way, that by scalping his victims, angry Ethan Edwards was no better than the Red Indian savage. That's progress of a sort, although the journey is shuffling, conflicted, and doesn't go far enough. It's fine for Ford to be ambivalent about the material. Ambivalence can lead us to fascinating places. In this case, however, the confusion serves only to dampen the drama. Wayne is all wrong and the tone is a mess. It feels as if Ford is cooking the right kind of movie with the wrong set of ingredients. So what happened next? My suspicion is that critics and fans stepped in to complete the film for him. They saw the direction The Searchers was going and rushed to convince themselves that it had achieved what it set out to do, or at least what they believed it had set out to do. They misinterpreted a tentative shuffle step as a giant leap forward and hailed the film as a revisionist masterpiece as opposed to a stumbling reconnaissance. All right, so obviously this guy has a different opinion than us on the subject.
Well,
but like here's part of the question is was Ford successful in getting his themes across, or do you think that he somehow did stumble? It wasn't able to quite get to his audience. I mean, this audience is from 1956. His audience at that time period just saw this as another Western. It wasn't very popular at its time. It's more popular in the 80s. It starts popping up as being popular in people's eyes.
I guess it depends. Well, when did he write that review?
I think this review comes from like maybe 3 or 4 years ago.
Oh, well, okay. See, he's trying to push his thinking now back then.
Right.
1956, the World War II was fresh. Korean War was just over.
Right.
Guys, people were for that.
Yeah.
You know, so your average audience probably didn't even think too deep about some of this stuff.
Yeah.
But as far as his review, the British were very anti-slavery.
Yeah.
Right. And from The Guardian, I don't think he knows anything about movies. To tell you the truth. I'm sorry.
Ignore all. Hey, Zan Brooks, we aren't interested in your reviews anymore.
No.
Yeah, that's it. You're out.
I mean, you know, people say that just to bring their name out.
Yeah.
I don't know what more you could ask about that movie.
Yeah.
You know,
I don't think it's just a matter of making a name for yourself by giving a negative review like that. But I think there is like because you could give a positive review, have tons of people read that as well. But it does stick out. I'll give you that. Unfortunately, I'm getting away from our camera person.
Okay.
We're out of time. So
Great.
I mean, I'd love to talk about The Searchers more, but I think we're as far as we can
lot of
possibly go for
trivia
the
in
amount
there
of time.
too, but
certainly,
we didn't get to it.
certainly. Hey, thank you for showing up. If you like this video, click like, subscribe on our channel. We'll be here. Just hit the next one. We're not going anywhere with you guys. It was great having you on, Cos.
All right. Take care.